Hello everyone, this is second video for lecture 4. In the previous video, we learned that unlike classic economists, neoclassic economists recognize need of government interventions. They identified several conditions where markets fail to achieve allocative efficiency. We covered a type of market failure, monopoly. In a monopoly, producer tends to provide less goods at a higher price. Also, in a natural monopoly, certain goods can be provided more efficiently than in a competition. In this video, we'll cover another type of market failure, externalities. So, what is externalities? According to Buchanan, who is Nobel Prize winner of economics, externality is a cost or benefit that affects a third party who did not intend to pay that cost or get that benefit. There are two types of externalities, negative externality and a positive externality. In the negative externality, the third party will pay cost incurred by externality. In positive externality, the third party will get benefits incurred by externality. In sum, if there are positive or negative effects in the market that are external to the third parties, that market is not producing optimal results in the entire society. So when considering externalities, we focus not only on one market of a good, but also on the entire society. So let's firstly see negative externality. Pollution is the most famous and understandable example of a negative externality. Actually, environment economists use concept of negative externality to justify environment protection. So let's assume that the farm which produces steel causes pollution, and pollution causes negative effects to third parties. For instance, they might bring dirty air, or some of us might become sick. Also, they might pollute the sea, and then fishermen might face shortage of fish, and then they might lose profits. However, the firm will not consider the cost of pollution to the third party, and specifically, the firm will not pay for the treatment of disease caused by the dirty air. Also, they will not compensate the loss of profits of fishermen. As a consequence, the cost of dealing with pollution are being paid by actors outside of the transaction, third parties. For instance, even if I become sick due to the dirty air, I'll just pay the treatment of that disease by myself. Also, fishermen will just accept the loss of profits due to the polluted sea. In sum, because the farm does not pay the cost of pollution, it will overproduce a good. So, how to reduce the overproduction is the issue with negative externality. So, in this slide, we'll see a situation where in a competitive market, farmers will overproduce goods and cause negative externality. So, in the theory of negative externality, we assume that there is an ideal situation where farmers pay for negative externality, pollution. And this is not market equilibrium because this is ideal situation. So we call this point as ideal equilibrium. Or we might say this as socially desired point. In this situation, there is no negative externality. However, in actuality, farm won't pay for pollution in a free market since they are self-interested. As a result of action of self-interested farm, they will overproduce steel of this amount. And then this is market equilibrium, because this is a result of action of self-interested farm again. In other words, the result of self-interested action leads to this overproduction. And the overproduction first causes pollution, and then pollution negatively affects the third party outside this market, fishermen or citizens, something like that. So society might want to have an equilibrium here rather than here to solve pollution. So to justify this ideal equilibrium, a society or government identify here's the deadweight loss, and they will insist we should reduce the production of steel to solve pollution. You might see this deadweight loss weird because we've just learned here's a consumer surplus and this is producer surplus, and then when the government increase the price or decrease the price, we'll have deadweight loss here. However, please note that in this situation we want to have ideal equilibrium and then here rather than market equilibrium, and then we theorize that market equilibrium causes negative externality due to overproduction, so we'll have deadweight loss here. I'll explain details of this theory in the next slide. So in this slide, I will explain why we had a deadweight loss here in the previous slide. So we've just learned A is consumer surplus and B is producer surplus. Let me just review consumer surplus. This is demand curve and this is supply curve. So I'll talk about consumer surplus. Demand curve represents willingness of consumers to buy goods. P is actual price. And at this point, consumers are willing to buy goods this amount at this price. However, actual price is here, so this is a surplus of consumer. The same reason, at this amount, consumers are happy to buy goods at this price. However, actual price is here, so the consumer get this surplus. And then I'll explain consumer deficit rather than surplus. These consumer deficit at this graph, because this demand curve represents a willingness of consumers to buy goods, but actual price is here. To buy this amount, consumer is willing to pay this price. However, actual price is here, so this is a deficit of consumer to buy these goods. The same reason, consumer is willing to pay this price to buy this amount of good, but actual price is here, so this part is a consumer's deficit. So this triangle D is consumer deficit. The same reason, C is producer deficit, because at this point producers are willing to produce good at this price, but actual price is here, so this is a deficit of producer because they want to get profits by selling the goods at higher price. Also, that's the same reason, at this point producers are willing to sell this amount of good at this price. However, actual price is here, so this is a deficit of producers, and that's why triangle C is producer deficit. So in the previous slide, we had ideal equilibrium here, the point society want, but market equilibrium was here. And if we had actual market price rightward against ideal equilibrium, we'll have this amount of deadweight loss. We've just covered a case of negative externality caused by suppliers or firms. There is another case of negative externality consumers cause. So I'll explain the negative externality from consumer's perspective. Firstly, consumption of product impose cost on third parties. For instance, driving automobile affects air quality. But because drivers do not pay for cost of polluting the air, drivers overconsume gas. Logic is the same as a negative externality from supply side, but let me explain the situation where consumers will overconsume goods and cause negative externality. So at this situation, ideal equilibrium here is not. This is not market equilibrium. Consumers pay for pollution. Because consumers are self-interested in a free market, they just consume gas as much as they want. So in other words, as a result of complete market self-interest actions, we will have this overconsumption which causes pollution. So as I explained in the previous slide for negative externality from supply side, this is ideal equilibrium and this is market equilibrium. So this overconsumption produces deadweight loss. So this is the end of this video. In the next video, I will explain how government interventions solve negative externalities, and also I will explain positive externalities.